Kitsch, the first of our four styles, is the lingua franca of the street. Every Night City neighborhood is awash with it, especially when focused on recreation and entertainment. Its style over substance mantra blares out from the objects of everyday life. Colorful and eye-catching, they must grab their potential buyers' attention in the store and distinguish them from the crowd on the street. Function comes second. Looks are what matter. Historically, kitsch's spread coincided with the cultural revolution brought about by braindance technology. Worn down by the harshness of reality, people began to fulfill their unattainable dreams through braindance sessions. Fame, wealth, thrills, even the simple satisfaction of a happy day. Anything could be achieved in a properly tuned session. This unmooring from reality gave birth to a garish, gaudy style, marked by tacky colors and a flaunting of implants that had ceased to be mere prosthetics or unpleasant necessities. Instead, cyberware emerged as the core of a new subculture, one obsessed with owning and displaying modified body parts. Kitsch is a scream echoing through an age of crisis, war, and failing states. It is the style of anarchy, of rebellion against a social order represented by corruption and all-crushing corporations. Though briefly disposed by entropism in the years following its rise, it soon roared back and remains omnipresent and inescapable on the street. Entropism is the style of poverty. We encounter it in the neglected parts of Night City, where the bottom rung of society has been left to its own devices. The products of entropism are crude, ugly even, yet durable. As its catchphrase suggests, it is design governed by necessity, not aesthetics. Entropism embodies the breakdown the Fourth Corporate War left in its wake. When supply lines and international trade collapsed, an enormous crisis followed, leaving people to find ways to survive by any means and using whatever was available to them. That led to the emergence of a new style that valued cost efficiency and getting the job done above all else. Corporations and tinkerers alike started producing cheap, crude implants and vehicles, hacks to get people through hard times. By 2077, some vintage examples from entropism's heyday are still in use, but most products made in this style that we encounter are new. Plenty of companies still manufacture cheap goods for those that can afford only the lowest of the low end. Neo-militarism, our third style chronologically, adds a layer of deadly elegance and corporate militaristic fashion to the stylistic mix of its predecessors. It is mostly encountered in the wealthier parts of the city, especially corporate zones and business districts. This style is epitomized by the catchphrase, substance over style, according to which products should be forceful, functional, and high quality rather than flashy. Neo-militarism's distinctive features are its cold, threatening elegance and formality, highlighted by the visible presence of militaristic accents. Historically, neo-militarism has its roots in the crisis that followed the Fourth Corporate War. The devastation that came on the heels of that conflict hit everyone hard, corporations and governments included. Once the dust settled and countries began more or less successful attempts to restore their authority, megacorporations like Arasaka and Militech saw an opportunity to carve out their own empires. They leapt into the fray and emerged holding a bigger hunk of the pie than ever before. Thus began a new era, one marked by neo-militarism, a style that came to symbolize recovery and redoubled corporate dominance. This is the last and most recently developed style in the fictional reality of 2077 that we've created. When the Treaty of Unification brought an end to the war between the United States and the Free States in 2070, Night City gained independence from both, claiming a new status as an international free city. With the risk of destruction lifted and the city's new leaders determined to adopt corporation-friendly policies, capital once again poured in and was captured by an elite new aristocracy. Thus, Neo-Kitsch was born. The style of celebrities, brain dance stars, magnates, heirs to corporate fortunes, and corporate CEOs. The 0.1% of the wealthiest and most influential Night citizens. Those who have become bored of the chrome, black, and graphite of their suits and armored vehicles. Surrounded in everyday life by the cold style of the corporate overclass, they abandon it for gold, silver, and platinum, for the warmth of real wood, ivory, and natural furs, rare and exclusive materials only they can afford. Neo-Kitsch is in a certain sense a return to the roots of kitsch, while also acting as a show of forceful luxury by people with so much money they need not care about the opinions of others. It is the style of demigods, the living legends of this world. Kitsch, cheap extravagance, consumerism, and rebellion against uniformity. In Cyberpunk 2077, this is the style of the street. Its motto, style over substance. Night City is not only our game's setting, but an icon of cyberpunk, a microcosm of our universe. It began as an empty plot on the California coast, where Richard Knight, visionary architect and entrepreneur, willed into existence a city meant to embody his ideals, to break from what he saw as the mistakes of the past. After his death, the megacorporations took control, and the city mushroomed into a sprawling metropolis, its growth directed by economic highs and lows rather than by any singular plan. Today, Night City is home to over 5 million people. Dozens of different cultures and ethnic groups intermix and form homogeneous communities that lend a distinct look to the districts in which they live. While visualizing Night City, we tried to ground it. Watson was once a thriving part of Night City. It was home to corporate offices, nightclubs, a top-end med center, and a prosperous industrial sub-district that provided employment for its residents. Then economic and natural disasters hit. Power and wealth moved downtown, and Watson was left to rot on the periphery, a virtual colony of the corporate core of Night City. That tumultuous history has left its visual markers in the styles we see in Watson today. A wall of austere skyscrapers fronts the canal separating Watson from city center, like a neo-militarist screen built to block the corporation's view of the grime they left behind. This verticality continues through Little China, then gradually gives way to the low, ramshackle kitsch of Kabuki, before ending in the sweeping horizontal entropism of the Northside Industrial District and the austere, fortified neo-militarism of the Arasaka waterfront. In the midst of it all, we have Watson's inhabitants, squeezed between the brutality of the corporations on the one hand and of the gangs on the other. For all their impoverished surroundings and bleak lives, they imbue the district with undeniable color and energy. In an earlier period, the Northside Industrial District is the workshop of Night City, a mini Manchesterian cluster of mills abutting the metropolis's heart.
Watch it!
Its factories gave jobs to thousands and pumped out the goods that brought in the city's wealth. Now, factories and workers alike have been outclassed and abandoned, leaving behind a skeleton of smokestacks as souvenirs. The buildings are entropic in form, simple, boxy, and horizontal, with tacked-on kitsch graffiti and advertisements. A wide road winds amongst them, and a massive AV hangar fills a whole block, an impressive hub dating from the district's glory days. Yet while one can pass through with relative ease, those left living here have it hard, working 18-hour days in the few factories still operational, and carving out a life in the rubble with the time that remains. The Arasaka Corporation purchased a large chunk of Watson.
This is a no-go zone. This is a no-go zone.
A modern manufacturing and logistics facility. Arasaka razed the crumbling structures of old Watson, and in their place erected a neo-militarist behemoth, a vast walled complex defended by guards and automated turrets. This sea of warehouses, hangars, and autonomous assembly lines dramatically overwhelms the human form, and bluntly pounds home the message with 100-meter Arasaka logos. Here the corporate machine rules, and man is nothing. Little China is a vibrant town within a town, grafted onto the remains of Watson's abandoned business center. When big money bailed, immigrants poured into and remodeled the now affordable structures. The result is a bustling, chaotic space, a skeleton of early-century corporate architecture spliced with elements of mid-century kitsch. Little China, to the south especially, remains vertical, but its office buildings have been repurposed for housing and small-scale industry, with new additions plopped on top or extended over them. Its residents live out their entire lives in the district, or even in one building. One might sleep on the balcony, repair cyber limbs in the former supply closet, and get grub from a noodle chef working out of the kitchen of a single former corporate office. There is plenty of entertainment on offer in Little China. It is crammed with restaurants and gambling dens that cater to tighter budgets than downtown or Japantown. When night falls, suits share its streets with fixers, mercenaries, and gang members, united in their search for cheap thrills. Yet it is primarily a district run by and for locals, a place whose vibrant yet grimy kitsch style emerged organically, not for the benefit of tourists.
Let's make our way to Little China.
It's like a damned dealer at a damn kabuki casino.
Kabuki's name is an artifact from an earlier era, when the area was controlled by Japanese medical corporations. Now, no one controls Kabuki. It is a shanty town, a sprawling bazaar where you can acquire literally anything, legal or, more often, not, for the right price.
It's like a damned dealer at a damn kabuki casino.
A warren of seedy shops, small stalls, and food carts. A world on a different scale than most of the city. Unlike the urban canyons of other districts, Kabuki's provisional low-rise architecture reveals open skies and lets enough sun peek through to power solar generators. With trash cans rolling across its dusty streets like tumbleweeds, here, Far East meets Wild West in a unique blend possible only in Night City. Westbrook is Night City at its most opulent. Money earned in the city's other districts comes here to be spent. Stylistically, here the neo-militarism of the city center gains a veneer of sleek, high-tech kitsch as it enters Japantown, then is deified into the celestial gardens of the uber-rich atop North Oak. Grime is still present, of course, and gangs and graffitis still abound. But in Westbrook, we catch a glimpse of the carrot dangled in front of the noses of Night City's masses. The message? Work hard, and one day you might own a slice of this. Or, as a shortcut, take out a loan and pretend you own it for one glorious night. Never mind that you'll spend the rest of your life paying it off.
If I call in the Tigers, your lunch, honey.
Japantown is Night City's answer to what would happen if Las Vegas had a love child with Kabukicho. This is the city's entertainment district. It's where the party's at. Massive billboards cover its buildings, and hollow ads spill into the street to urge you to join the fun. The city's urban delirium is cranked to 11, made purposefully disorienting so you lose track of time, and more importantly, how much you've spent. Japantown's efforts to offer something for everyone are aided by its location and its height. Tucked between City Center, where the corporate titans work, and North Oak, where they keep their luxurious villas, it has erected skyscraper casinos as a net, hoping to catch a bit of the unimaginable wealth in the AVs commuting over it. At the same time, the towers act like giant billboards, their bright lights clearly visible from Watson and Charter Hill. Whereas Corporate Plaza's verticality looms and intimidates, here it entices and attracts, encouraging have-nots and almost-haves alike to come pretend, for a night, that they have.
Fine, triple, and you disappear like the morning dew off North Oak front yards.
In 2077, green is the new gold. Nothing grows unless you shower it with Eurodollars. A bonsai tree on your balcony is like a luxurious watch on your wrist today. An attempt to subtly let everyone know you're rich. An entire forest in your backyard? Like carving your name and net worth on the moon. North Oak is all about such mind-boggling displays of wealth. But the night citizens who gape at them from the districts below are only the lesser part of the intended audience. Mostly, the outrageous villas and exotic menageries are intended to cow peers and rivals during invitation-only soirees. Though their effect on visitors is carefully calculated, North Oak villas do not neglect the needs of their owners. After a hard day hoarding wealth in the austere surroundings of City Center, corporate titans find repose in the soothing contours and natural materials of their homes. From infinity pools atop mansions designed by star architects, surrounded by space-harvested metals and organically bred pets, they take in a curated view of the city in all its varied splendor, knowing they are its masters. Care is taken to blend North Oak's small army of security agents and automated defense systems into the landscape. But some walls and checkpoints stand out nevertheless. Likewise, there is no hiding the ugly brown badlands that abut the estates, or the smoky hellscapes of the oil fields just visible on the horizon.
Babe, it's like I always say, no risk, no reward.
While the gods among men of Night City relax in the pseudo-natural environs of North Oak, the mid-level executive suits who live in Charter Hill get no reprieve from the brutal aesthetics of corporate life. The high-rise apartment towers of this district do not differ all that much in their basic style from the gargantuan office buildings of City Center. One can even imagine haggard corporate employees forgetting whether the elevator is whisking them home or to the office. That said, flats in Charter Hill are highly coveted and offer the best version of Night City life a mere mortal can realistically obtain. Here, the city is relatively clean, well-policed, and well-connected. To top it off, you have a clear view of North Oak to fuel your fantasies of what could be yours if you climbed to the top of the ladder. In the opposite direction, the toxic dumping grounds of Arroyo feed nightmares of what awaits if you slip off. From a distance, downtown Night City resembles a fortress. A Tuscan hill town where thick walls surround a huddled cluster of towers, its architecture designed to keep barbarians and rivals at bay. Here we see neo-militarism in its purest form. Corporate power makes itself forcefully known, projecting with mind-boggling mass and overwhelming firepower the message that you, the individual, should just give up now. In truth, this pageantry is akin to a TSA checkpoint, a forceful show of security born of deep insecurity. Night City's center was obliterated by a nuclear explosion in the 2020s, in what was deemed a terrorist attack by the authorities. The destruction left behind a lasting sense of fragility on the part of Night City's corporations, a fear that, for all their power, a determined few armed with the right weapons could burn their domain to the ground. The resultant overcompensation turned the center into a fortified Mordor, where every tool of surveillance and control is employed to keep people in check.
Oh, this place can be such a bore, but I can tell you're different. Care to keep me company?
Though in truth locked down and thoroughly corporate controlled, downtown feels loose and relaxed compared to Corporate Plaza. There's plenty to do by way of entertainment, but it's not quite fun like Japantown is. It is not a district designed for your pleasure, but which pleasures you as a calculated move to maximize your productivity. Few actually live downtown, but its streets are still filled with life. During the day, pedestrians swarm, taking care of the business of keeping Night City in business, while at night, tourists and corporate employees on vacation a few hundred yards from their offices stumble from their downtown hotels to its many bars and clubs. All in all, downtown is classic cyberpunk. Corridors of glass and steel, seas of pedestrians, in-your-face ads on every corner. In terms of our styles, here you find controlled kitsch, busy, bright, and colorful, but against a neo-militarist backdrop that reminds you this is still corporate turf.
As we agreed, I got rid of the problem.
By 2077, corporations have assumed many of the prerogatives formerly reserved for nation-states. They claim extraterritorial privileges that grant immunity to their employees and agents. They maintain private armies and wage private wars, both openly and covertly. They sign treaties with other corporations and even with sovereign nations. As a result, Corporate Plaza resembles an embassy district or the United Nations headquarters in New York, a space where independent and often hostile powers have staked out a shaky truce, a demilitarized zone where diplomacy can take place and operations be carried out in safety. Corporate Plaza is the purest expression of neo-militarism. The buildings serve as weapons in the corporation's never-ending wars and look the part. Aggressive, fortified, domineering. Standing here, you feel like you're at the center of a universe ready to gobble you up and spit you out. In some ways, Haywood is the Westbrook of the Southeast, a bedroom and bar borough in a semicircle outside the city center. Haywood trends decidedly more downmarket, true, but it has the same basic ingredients. Japantown's role as neon-lit money sponge is played by the strip of restaurants and shopping malls near the coast in Willow Springs. Charter Hill's offer of aspirational yet achievable real estate is echoed by Haywood's modest middle areas. North Oak's villas are... well, Haywood has some nice townhouses. In most ways, though, Haywood is unique. By 2077, the middle class has mostly disappeared, forced into poverty as the ridiculously rich got ridiculously richer. Yet somehow, Haywood manages to approximate a middle-class district all the same. Here live those who can scrape together enough to get out of Watson, Pacifica, or the wastelands outside town, but not enough to buy their way into Charter Hill. These lucky few cling tightly to their recognizably decent standard of living. It is no surprise, then, that Haywood's residents love their district, warts, violent gangs, and all, with fierce pride.
You ain't in the game, cabron!
The Glen is Night City's government district, home to and owned by City Hall. A quick glance at the illustration of this seat of municipal authority compared to those of corporate headquarters should tell you what you need to know about the relative distribution of wealth and power. Then City Councilman Lucius Rhine's deal with Arasaka in 2070 gave Night City its independence from the countries around it, but at the price of ceding much control of the city itself to corporations. Arasaka first and foremost. The transfer of power was physically reflected in the rebuilding of Corporate Plaza, which forced City Hall out of the center and into this less than prime piece of real estate. Its northern edge, that closest to city center, verges on tolerable and even attractive. A peaceful park borders a row of elegant skyscrapers, and behind them, City Hall itself. Heading south, however, the Glen quickly becomes impoverished and crime-ridden. It merges into Vista del Rey, where the Valentinos are the true rulers of gritty, though colorful, streets. For the adventurous, or just those with few choices, there is still fun to be had. But overall, life is nasty, grim, and short.
Sweetheart, don't think. Just put something on and shine.
Wellspring's coastal strip is the safest, densest, and loudest part of Haywood. This can be thought of as Night City's Venice Beach, a place to be seen for celebrities and the chance to see them for nobodies, where you can dine on cheap scop hot dogs or ridiculously expensive organic seafood. It is chock full of kitsch, oversized mascots, over-the-top slogans, anything that will grab your attention. The architecture is laid back, not so much decaying as casual, with the washed-out vibe of a beach town. At the same time, plenty of wealth is on display, be it in the luxury yachts anchored off the promenade or the spacious condos in its high-rise apartment buildings. Towering mega-buildings containing tens of thousands of tiny apartments. In their shadow, a failed attempt to create a suburban utopia of single-family dwellings. Stark contrasts mark every corner of Night City, but few are starker than Santo Domingo's. Here, verticality abuts sprawl. Factories and power plants sit right next to supposedly idyllic residential neighborhoods, and the whole urban planning concept of separate functional zones is flipped the bird. Santo Domingo is something like your trashy cousin's backyard, full of broken-down pickups and moldy garden gnomes. It is a district that has undergone constant change. It's cheap land where every mad scheme gets a shot, then is swept clean to make way for the next one.
I was out on the street. Applied anywhere I could for a job. Walked into every factory. I would have worked for any's.
Think of this as the Southside Industrial District, and you're not far off. Except Arroyo somehow manages to be even dirtier and more derelict than its northern cousin. Its factories focus on heavy metallurgy, or at least did, before the majority went bankrupt. When they shut their doors, they left a dozen megabuildings worth of newly unemployed neighbors standing outside. The only gainful employment to be had was either with gangs or security corporations keeping gangs away from the few still active factories. Arroyo is entropism with a neo-militarist edge, a district of teetering chimneys and crumbling but still imposing megabuildings. Yet the people who live here are colorful and feisty, as reflected in the kitsch graffiti and outfits we see at street level.
But real people live here in Arroyo and Rancho Coronado. Can't pull the wool over their eyes.
Tree-lined cul-de-sacs, backyard pools, red tile roofs, and a rocking chair on every porch. Rancho Coronado was supposed to have it all. The 20th century suburban dream recreated in a dried-up riverbed by the old Petrochem Dam Cum landfill on the edge of town. The glossy brochures wrote themselves. Leave the meat grinder of the city behind and live in a self-contained slice of paradise. You'll have shops, services, and entertainment right in the neighborhood, and good jobs in the Arroyo factories next door. You'll never have to return to Night City proper again. The funding and will to actually achieve this vision never materialized. Rancho Coronado is a half-assed simulacrum of a suburb, a glorified shantytown slapped down on toxic soil next to a dump. Still, many are happy to live there. Its corporate owners pay for a private security force, so it's fairly safe. Tiny cookie-cutter houses are no North Oak villas, but they sure beat the rat holes in Arroyo mega buildings. And while garbage AVs constantly spill trash on you, some of it you can fix up or sell. Squint, and Pacifica almost looks like the tantalizing vision that gave its initial investors stiffies. Hotels with ocean views and private pools, an amusement park to bring in that family vacation Eurodollar, a beach complete with a pier, umbrellas, and... okay, garbage. But that's the price of being next to Night City. And that prime location is what would make this resort a money-making machine. Those investors didn't stay hard for Pacifica for long, however. Mid-construction, hotter opportunities came along and they pulled out, leaving the half-finished buildings to rot. Gangs moved in, and the would-be beachfront paradise became a war zone. The city gave up on fixing or bulldozing it and just walled the whole place off. What was supposed to be every visitor's first stop is now a hostile hellhole you can't enter even if you're crazy enough to want to. As a result, Pacifica serves as 2077's version of a hallowed cyberpunk tradition. The Combat Zone, a place where bullets can fly without any cops or civilians getting in the way. Making that zone an abandoned resort opened up room for our artists to play with sharp visual contrasts. Funhouse signs riddled with bullet holes, luxury pools filled with chemical sludge. In terms of style, here entropism has engulfed an aborted attempt at kitsch.
This is our turf, our home.
Spend enough time in Night City and you start to wonder why anyone would want to live here. Beyond the city limits, you stop wondering real quick. Things are a hell of a lot worse outside. Unchecked resource extraction, rampant pollution, and a climate in crisis do not make for a happy weekend getaway. For all its flaws, at least Night City gives you moments of reprieve. In its flashing casinos and slick cocktail bars where you can forget your miserable life for an hour and pretend that everything is going to be fine and dandy. In the wasted badlands and burning oil fields outside the city, the smell of dystopia, or is it just the sulfur, never leaves your nostrils. Beyond the city's borders, we find entropism at its ugliest, but also at its grandest in terms of scale. Looking down from an AV or an airplane approaching the city, you see endless rows of solar panels and windmills, acres and acres of greenhouses, huge open-pit oil fields. You can't help but be impressed. You see just what it cost to keep a resource-intensive economy going for another century. The natural world, California's great legacy, is dead. Or shall we say undead? Though oil was never Night City's main economic driver, it still played a vital role in the city's history. Richard Knight chose Coronado Bay as the location for his grand project, in part because one of his corporate investors, Petrochem, already owned drilling rights to much of the land. The oil fields north of the city are both testimony and legacy to these insider deals. Pitch black, smoke-filled and flooded with oil-tainted water, they present a stark contrast both to the dusty, oversaturated, sun-baked feel of other outer districts and the sanitized sheen of city center visible on the horizon. A highway heads east out of Night City and straight into a post-apocalyptic Wild West. This is nomad territory, hence the provisory architecture. Tents, trailers, and camper vans. The only permanent structures are abandoned relics, ghost towns scavenged and repurposed by wandering folk. Stylistically, entropism rules here, since everything must serve maximal purpose at minimal cost. Yet it is far more likely to be DIY and jury-rigged than mass-produced corporate junk. The ostentatious, blaring kitsch of Night City's entertainment districts is completely absent, though the nomads have a vibrant visual identity featured in the patches they sew on their clothes and the graffiti they tag on their rides. These splashes of color are, however, the exceptions, in a region dominated by two elements: blinding sunlight and choking dust. Somewhat paradoxically, the desert to the south of Night City blossoms and glistens. Massive corporate-owned farms stretch out as far as the eyes can see, producing synthetic food in a highly mechanized process vaguely resembling agriculture. Meanwhile, flat fields of solar panels convert the abundant sunlight into electricity. Tall turbines do the same with the unceasing coastal wind. The overall impression is one of paradox. Tightly packed empty space, uninhabited land deeply marked by human habitation. The stomach and spinal cord shunted outside the body. The dark future envisaged in cyberpunk calls for characters that fit. Role-players used to the brave and honest space captains or merry fellowships of other genres must drastically adjust their expectations. In this world, few are looking to greet you with a hearty handshake, but plenty will cut your hand off and sell it to the highest bidder. Pretty much everyone is trying to scrape out some kind of life in a desperate mess. Grim as those lives might be, they are anything but gray. Cyberpunk characters are all about flair and panache. These aren't pathetic, bunker-dwelling, cockroach-eating, order-worshipping dystopian denizens. These are go out in a beautiful blaze, middle fingers cocked hard ass. V is you.
You know how things work in Night City? I'm V. You know how things work in Night City?
The first person singular. We see the world through the implants in her eyes. We maim enemies with the blades in his arms. When a thug points a gun at their head, it is pointed straight at us. When you ask someone to sit in someone else's skin like this, you have to make sure they feel comfortable in it.
You know how things work in Night City? I'm V.
We went through many iterations of V's default look before settling on the final concept seen on the left. While this V's appearance, used in trailers, box art, and other marketing materials, conveys a great deal about the story we wish to tell, it remains a mere suggestion. In the end, V's look is up to you. Wake the fuck up,
Hop in.
samurai.
I'll even let you
In the
drive.
game, these words announce that Johnny Silverhand, legendary rocker boy, has smashed into our character's brain. At the Xbox E3 2019 press conference, the words announced that Keanu Reeves, a legend himself, had smashed into gamers' hearts as Johnny's voice actor and visual inspiration. Johnny's face is pure Keanu, but the rest of his appearance is ripped straight from the pages of the Cyberpunk 2020 manuals. As we put it in our early character briefs, Johnny is lean and wiry, with a lot of sex appeal. His entire body exudes a kind of built-up tension and nervous energy. Even when he seems laid back, you get the impression that Johnny's frozen in time. We see him exactly how he looked during his big disastrous hit on Arasaka, black jacket and all. His namesake Cyberhand is there, chrome glistening, fingers ready to pluck out a blistering guitar solo or his enemy's eyeballs. He still sports a ragged mane of dark hair and all the scars and tattoos you'd expect on a former soldier and lifelong rebel. And of course, he's still got his trademark swagger. Samurai was Johnny's band. They had a dedicated following of outcasts that would come see them play in dingy basements and abandoned factories, but never broke into the mainstream. Not that Johnny wanted them to. After Johnny's presumed death, the band tried to go on without him and experimented with a new style, even re-recording their biggest hit, Chippin' In, but soon broke up. Samurai's cult status lived on, though, and their logo became something for future rebel generations to spray on walls or patch on their jackets. Johnny's hand was top-of-the-line tech in the early 21st century. A cutting-edge prototype straight from the combat cyberware labs of, oh sweet irony, the Arasaka Corporation. By 2077, it's decidedly old school. But think of it as a mint-condition Hemi V8. Might be missing some frills, but it will beat the shit out of most plastic garbage produced today. And it can pluck sweet beauty out of his trusty guitar, the evolution of whose design you can see in these concepts. Johnny drives a Porsche, because of course he does. That means V gets to drive it. We get to drive it. And though it's decidedly old school in its technology and its appearance by 2077, it's still a hell of a ride. In 2077 Night City, society is split into highly distinct tribe-like groups. They are the most important determinant of how you dress, how you spend your time, who your friends are, and whom you would like to kill. A nomad elder, an NCPD detective, an Arasaka suit, and a Voodoo Boys netrunner might all live within a few miles of one another. Yet they lead lives so alien to each other they might as well be from different galaxies. As a cyberpunk, the player has the opportunity to make friends and enemies across caste lines, gaining intimate insight into a broad swath of the factions active in the city. As designers, we wanted to make these factions as developed, vibrant, and real as possible. Nomads often sew patches on their clothes to proclaim allegiance to a particular family, clan, or nation, but would never wear anything like a uniform, or even the matching colors and styles associated with gangs. They prize their individuality and freedom above all else. world of Cyberpunk 2077, most turn to electronic cyberware and beefy guns to solve their problems. The Animals, a gang of ferocious freaks often encountered in West Pacifica, shun both. Instead, they use electronics-free artisanal implants as well as nanosurgery to deliver ultra-advanced steroids and nutrients directly to their cells. They have also honed a method of street fighting to deploy those bodies as effective weapons against firearm-toting rivals. They spend most of their time in Pacifica's abandoned playgrounds, but can be seen throughout the city wherever a take-no-shit bouncer or bodyguard is needed. Muscles that look like they are about to burst through the skin, tube-sized veins, shaved heads sitting directly atop ox-like shoulders. The Animals' bodies are their uniforms and most distinctive features. Their skin is covered with the side effects of the muscle-bulking chemicals, hideous scars and rash-like marks. Due to the ludicrous strength of these muscles, they need endoskeletal implants and joint reinforcements to keep their bones from crushing themselves and their tendons from snapping. Bits of metal can thus be seen among the mounds of flesh. But for the most part, the Animals are stunning examples of how incredibly unnatural, organic can look. Everybody loved Lizzie's, the strip club run by ex-prostitute Elizabeth Lizzie Borden. Lizzie was known for treating her employees fairly and defending them from violent clients, and thus for having the most attractive and skilled dolls in the business. When she took an axe to a Tiger Claw for having raped one of her girls, his gang took revenge, killing her and demolishing her club. Lizzie's was no more. But the riots and protests that followed the club's demise gave birth to the Mox, a gang of sex workers, sexual minorities, punks, and anarchists who found the Moxie to fight back. The Mox's attire and iconography combine elements associated with prostitution and a fetishized form of femininity, with skulls, axes, spikes. The factories and warehouses of Northside Night City are home to Maelstrom, a highly feared gang with a reputation for extreme violence. Its members worship the mysteries of cyberspace. This fascination inspires them to dehumanize themselves with drastic cyber modifications. This is blended with a healthy dose of Nordic mythology and all things occult, seen most frequently in their many tattoos and the graffiti they use. Considered by some the 8th nomad nation, in truth, the Raf and Shiv constitute a completely separate group that operates according to entirely different rules. Their very name a blend of nomad pejoratives, the Raf and Shiv are a motley crew of those exiled from other nomad groups for violating customs and other transgressions. They thus have no common identity or ethos, no leaders, and no recognizable style. They are in essence no more than rural. The Tiger Claws are based in Japantown, a classic little Tokyo that includes a Kabuchiko-like red light district. Here they run an assortment of gambling halls and houses of illicit pleasure, another reason for their fierce rivalry with the Mox. The gang members specialize in MMA-style fighting techniques, which they hone at the Dome, an exclusive sports facility where Tiger Claws, Yakuza, and MMA stars mingle. The Tiger Claws prefer melee weapons, especially ceramic tantos and katanas, though the biggest and baddest of their... In Vista del Rey, an impoverished Latino barrio where people scrape out a living and have a damn good time doing it, the Valentinos are kings. During the nightly parties and drag races that fill its streets, fallen Valentinos stare down from giant murals, while living Valentinos watch from places of honor. Every corner boasts a shrine to the Valentinos' idols, Santa Muerte, the Saint of Death, or boys do not call themselves by that name. It was given to them by others, based on superficial similarities to an early 21st century university-era gang of drug dealers. From this original gang, the voodoo stuff was just a pose, a lark. For the 2077 gang, their religion is a deadly serious matter. Guns are omnipresent in Cyberpunk 2077. Not just because it is a game with gun-based combat. Not only because gun-toting gangsters, cyberpunks, and corpo grunts are at the heart of its story, but because guns are an inescapable part of life in Night City and the world around it. In this dark future, the days of laws and honest police forces are relics of a hazy past. Violence is once again the most common method of solving disputes. Only patsies and the desperately poor don't pack heat. Meeting and promoting this enormous demand for guns are dozens of weapons. AVs, hovercrafts, orbital shuttles. There are many transportation options in 2077 Night City, but for getting where you're going quickly, cheaply, and in the finest of style, nothing beats a car. The cars in our game are more than just people movers, however. Each tells a story about its time and place of production, what needs it tries to meet, what dreams it tries to fulfill.